Welcome to the Jerry Pitre Show, your go-to podcast for everything in the world of collectible cards and sports memorabilia. Whether you're a seasoned collector or just getting started, we dive deep into the stories, the history, and the trends shaping the market, from iconic rookie cards to rare sports artifacts. Join us as we explore the fascinating intersection of sports and collecting. Let's dig into the treasures that tell the story of legends, featuring my third guest, Jamie from Thomas Family Hustle 205. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Hey, so I've known about Thomas Family Hustle for quite a while now. She's been setting up at shows, she's been doing great content, and really, I just felt like she would be an interesting guest. Like, give us a little rundown of yourself. Tell the people.
Um, so I'm 19. I've been doing this for about 3 years now. We started around COVID. I got a little bored, um, and I got into going to yard sales. And the eBay store started as collectibles, and it was like just some miscellaneous things. And went to Target a couple weeks later, saw some sports cards, bought a couple boxes, and opened them up. And I've been doing it ever since. There wasn't really a thing that got me into it. It was just because I was bored and I found something that I enjoyed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So one of the things that I've really liked about her style is like she does WWE, WNBA, lots of female athletes, and a really good variety of like short print stuff, cool autographs. I mean, all the time. I've seen just tons of cool stuff. Definitely, she's inspired me to rip some WWE, and I definitely don't rip. So hey, let's start out. Like, do you have like a particular like PC? Do you have like a particular athlete that you are PCing right now?
Nothing in particular. It's kind of just when I open, if I see something that, catches my eye that I think is just really unique, I haven't seen much of, then I tend to keep that for myself. But most everything will just go onto our eBay store. I tend to lean more towards the female side of things, so like the female wrestlers, the female basketball players. Um, but I also am a big Roman Reigns fan, so I do have a PC of him.
I was gonna say, I mean that's the tribal chief, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So like you kind of lightly hit on it. Like what criteria like goes like other than the eye appeal, like what goes, hey, this is going into my collection.
Honestly, I just think about their relevancy to me. So like if I've seen them on TV recently, and I think that, they're going to do great things and it's something that I want to personally keep, then, it's something that I keep to myself. But equally, I'll put some on to our eBay store to kind of draw attention to it as well, to keep a good balance of personal and business.
That's fair. That's fair. So like what's the rarest card in your collection? Like what makes it so special to you?
I don't really know if I don't know if I have one that really stands out in terms of like rarity. Um, I've had a couple cool ones that have come through. A couple green full stars. Had a Hulk Hogan out of 25. That was a pretty sweet card. Um, I mean, that would probably top it. I did get a Roman out of 49. That
It's
I
pretty
loved the
sick.
pink. It was amazing. His photo is great. Um, but that's probably it. Now I did get a CJ. I got a CJ Green Velocity, the rated rookie. That that was probably my favorite in terms of things that I've come across and kept and things like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So do I've seen kind of like what you're doing online. Do you do like a lot of sales of like raw? Are you grading a bunch? Like what's your strategy?
So we tend to do more raw. We kind of have gotten into the grading aspect of things more recently. Um, Now, on what we move on our eBay store, it's a lot of raw. We tend to sell more of our graded at card shows. I guess it just has more of an appeal there. Um, but I love sending cards out that I think are unique, that I think obviously pass what I believe to be, how they grade it, determine its value. Um, but I kind of just base it off of comps and personal preference.
Awesome. So that's a great transition to my next question. Like, what kind of resources are you using? Because like the whole focus of like this is to kind of like teach the novice like how to hobby. So like, what resources are you actively using to like comp prices and stuff like that?
So primarily eBay. I'll kind of look. Number one, I always look at solds, and I kind of see the range that it's going for. And if I see that it's fluctuating, I then go to actives and I sort by lowest, and I kind of see what people have out there. And I kind of determine if it's selling for $60, but the lowest active is 40 and it's not moving, then I get a little worried because obviously there's something not right with the card. It's not moving. So then I become a little skeptical on kind of sending those kinds of cards off. So I'm a little bit more selective when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's totally like on track with what I do. Very often I try to be like, which I know people on eBay definitely hate me for this, but I try to be like, if not the lowest, like one of the top three lowest on eBay. And I see it all the time where people go, the last did 60 and I'll only take 60. And like you said, there's
Mhm,
active up and running for 40 and has no traction, no watchers. And it's like, you know, those are definitely not the ones I want to send off for grading.
mhm.
So when you do decide to grade, what company are you using, or do you use multiple companies?
So I use SGC, and I know that their opinions on that. I use SGC because of their turnaround time. It's convenient. I can get my product back faster. And to me, a grading company is a grading company. To me, it doesn't hold any additional value. Um, I still move them, but I'm a big SGC person just because of how quick that they can, get me my cards back and things like that.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I love SGC on the fact of it's easy to be first to market. I there's a lot of dealers who go, "Oh, it's PSA or it's nothing." But I mean, honestly, especially when selling online or selling at shows, when you're one of the first people to go, "Hey, I have this person in a 10, whether that's an SGC 10 or whatever." Yeah, I feel like that holds significantly more value than waiting 2, 3 months later and then going, "Oh, I've got a PSA 10."
Mhm.
So have you done any grading with PSA or you just strictly SGC?
I think we did some Pokemon cards. We sent to PSA. They were having like a deal that week for Pokemon cards. And we had a couple that we had come across, and we sent a handful of them off. But that is the only cards I've ever sent to PSA. All of the cards that I choose to grade will always go to SGC.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And honestly, I like the way the SGC slabs feel. I think it's like a good happy medium of like thickness because like PSAs are real thin. I mean, I don't know if you recently saw there was a guy who was breaking PSAs with his thumbnail. Like, it's just a very thin slab. Yeah. And Beckett's good. I mean, I'm pretty sure you could shoot a Beckett slab and it's not going to break. It's so thick. But I feel like SGC is that happy middle ground. Um, so since you are so like WWE heavy, like how do you think like I guess you can't really call them like, well, they're an athlete, right? How do you think their performance affects their value?
Something I've noticed is like, I'll take Braun Breaker for instance. He just came up and now he's on main roster. When he was, first debuting, on TV and everything, his value was a lot higher, because he's relevant, he's on TV, you're seeing more of him. I've noticed now as time has kind of gone on and his storylines are kind of fallen, off a little bit for right now. His value has definitely decreased. I just think it's very important, specifically in wrestling, that, if they're not on TV, the value is just not the same. Um, but, and that's not to say now rookie cards of certain people will always move no matter, when it is. But in terms of the specialty cards, I think you really have to time it right with, what they're doing on TV currently or what they're about to do and things like that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Because I've kind of seen that where what was it? Cody Rhodes, right as he was kind of really getting hot, like everybody was chasing Cody Rhodes as far as like his collectible stuff. And as of here recently, because I don't really keep up with it as much as I really should, but I have noticed his prices are kind of trending down. Um, Now, you didn't go to Fanatics Fest in New York, did you?
Yes, sir.
See, that was the thing that I think really made Fanatics Fest in New York amazing. Was everybody was at the WWE section. I mean, I'm not sure if you saw any videos on it, but it was epic. I mean, the line was wrapped
Mhm.
around the building. I mean, it was super cool, honestly. And as a guy who's I'm very lightly into wrestling. Like it came through so I live in Huntsville, and they had a wrestling match come to the Von Braun Civic Center, and I went to that, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, as a guy who never went, it was definitely really enjoyable. Um, so is there any particular like wrestlers that like maybe like the viewers need to look out for? Do you see anybody kind of like a sneaky up and coming kind of play?
I don't know. I think currently, I think that there's so much happening right now on TV. It's making it kind of difficult for, some of the NXT people to start kind of coming up. Now, I think as we get towards the end of the year, they're getting ready to debut onto Netflix. I think you'll start seeing some of those rookies, Carmen Petrovic, Izzy Dane, Jada Parker. I think you'll see a couple of girls kind of start getting a bigger role onto TV. But in terms of the guys, I think right now, I think that they have so many. I think that they're kind of holding off a little bit until they can kind of, figure out, what they have currently.
Now, as a fan, what are your feelings about like them moving to Netflix? Like, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Like how do you interpret it?
I mean, I can see both sides. I can see it as, being a pro. You're reaching out, you're connecting with individuals that, maybe don't have the streaming service that it's on currently. And they have Netflix instead. So I think you'll see a little bit more in terms of audience, but equally I can see, the downside to it. I mean, if people don't have Netflix, then they can't watch it anymore. So you're gonna lose them. So I think it's gonna balance out, but I don't really know if it's gonna have like a positive effect on anything, but I also can't say it'll have a negative effect either.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I've kind of heard because I've got friends who are very much so into. I mean, live, breathe, die hard, and some people hate the move. Some people are super excited for it, and so it is kind of interesting just to hear the differing opinions. Now, one thing that I have noticed, like in the sports world, autographs, like autograph cards, seem to do really, really well. In the wrestling world, it doesn't seem like a lot of people are really into autographs as far as on card. Like, is that something you've noticed, or like could maybe give like a further like explanation on?
I mean, personally, well, number one, we don't tend to have a lot of the on card autographs come through to us, just because they tend to be the impeccable, the immaculate, things like that. Um, but from what I've seen in the cards that we have gotten a hold of, I definitely think for wrestling, it will always depend on the person. Some autos, even if they're on card autos, I think that, if they're not somebody that's relevant and active, then it's going to have no effect whatsoever if it's on card or a sticker. But I think if you get a Tiffany Stratton on card auto, those sell crazy. I mean, even her stickers do, but the on card holds more value. Um, but I definitely think I've seen that when I've kind of looked up comps and different sports things like that, that the autos in wrestling don't tend to sell as much as football or basketball and things like
Yeah, that's something I noticed, and like, as like an outsider looking in, it's like, guys are paying just crazy money for Anthony Richardson's micro
that.
autograph, and like, it's like I think they're like cool wrestlers, and you look at the prices, and it's like, wow, we really care about this rookie who really hasn't proved much, and then like these legend autographs are just like, I don't want to say underappreciated, but it kind of feels like it. Now, how long have you been a wrestling fan?
So my parents took me to the local SmackDown show. It comes to the BJCC here in Birmingham. It comes once a year, and I went a long time ago. I was probably 8 or 9. Um, and they took me to my first event, and it was when the Shield was still around. And it was when they could come down, the stairs and the crowds, and it was so exciting. And Roman Reigns came down the stairs next to where we were sitting, and I like fangirled so hard because I was a big Shield person, and high five the whole 9 yards. And after that, I kept it going. I was interested, and I still go every time it's here. I'm always there.
Now, are you watching it like as they? Because what is it, Thursday night that they have wrestling? Like, or do you watch it like actively on TV?
So I tend to watch the pay-per-views of the bigger events just because it's just not conducive to my schedule during the week. But if it's on a Saturday or a Sunday, we are sitting and we are watching it. Even if we have to wait until that night, when it's not live anymore, we will be watching it. But I keep up with it, through Twitter and Instagram and all those things, so I can still kind of see what's happening even if I'm not watching it.
Totally fair. Totally fair. And that's one of the things I do like about the WWE is like literally like you can go watch it on TikTok live and like they're ringside showing it right there. And it's like, as I'm watching kind of the WNBA like learn how to navigate like recent popularity, I'm like, dude, the WWE is doing it. Just have somebody there with a iPad or a phone and go, hey, this is what's happening. Um, Now since you've been into wrestling, like what are some like kind of, evolutions that you've seen that you really enjoy and would like to see continue?
I don't know. I mean, I've obviously have seen this for so long. I've watched it for a while now. I think over time, specifically recently, I really like the storylines that are coming out. They're a little bit more in depth than they once were. I think that that's really helping, keep people interested in the show. I just think that, obviously they're kind of relating it more to some of the fan theories, hey, it looks like someone's scrolling on Twitter and they're watching, people go back and forth and like, oh, this person against this person. And you kind of start seeing that on TV. And it feels like they're definitely taking a little bit of fan consideration kind of into the things that they're, portraying on screen, which I think is really, really cool, just to kind of go back and be like, oh my gosh, I saw that, and now it's actually happening. It's like I predicted it. But that's probably my favorite is just seeing how the storylines are kind of progressing, which I think is a really big, good step for them.
Yeah, and I've had some buddies and they were telling me something very similar. They're like, "Oh my god, on Reddit they were talking about this and it actually happened." And it's like that is super cool for them to like take into consideration of like not what the fans want, but like kind of to a point. Like, give the people what they want, right? I mean,
Mhm.
um, now since since you're in the hobby, like how would you describe yourself? Are you a collector? Are you an investor? Are you a dealer? Are you a flipper? Like kind of where do you fall?
I would probably be on the flipper side of things, just and it's just how I do things. I'll raid a dollar box and I'll find things, and I'll turn around and try to make something of it. Um, but I would classify as a flipper.
That's fair. That's fair. And listen, there's no shame. I'm definitely a flipper. I literally, uh, if I can buy something for $1 and sell it for 10, you've got my money any day. I really, on the Quiet Card podcast, we often preach to go through those dollar boxes, to go through those value boxes, because I see so many guys and girls kind of lose out because they're only chasing graded cards or they're only chasing $200-300 cards, and it's like, you know, we were referencing another content creator who spends thousands of dollars to make like 200-300 bucks, and I'm like, why would you take the risk when you go spend 200 bucks in the dollar box and turn it into 500? You know what I mean? So I definitely think that's a super smart strategy. Um, so like once again, this is kind of a podcast for people up and coming. Like, why should people go to a card show? I mean, I see you set up at shows all the time. I've seen you and your family kind of walk in the shows when you're not set up. Like, if I'm somebody who is a novice, everybody's got eBay, whatnot, all of that. Like, sell me. Why should I go to a card show?
Number one, I think it's a great way to connect with other individuals that have the same interests. You go to a card show, and most of the time, you're going to find, someone in all genres of cards. And I think that really helps because you can go up to their table and you can carry on a conversation that generally enjoy, talking about, which I think kind of helps, grow this in a sense. I think, once you kind of influence somebody, then they're like, oh, maybe I should get into this too. That'd be really cool. Um, I think that's the cool aspect of it. But overall, I think it's about having a little bit of fun. Come, see, check it out. It's not for everybody, but I think it's a great way to kind of get into it without going all the way, hardcore. Um, but I think the relationship that you can build with people is a big thing when you go to card shows.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, honestly, sometimes I think that the community is probably more valuable than the cards themselves. I mean, on a business aspect, you can always meet people and make money time and time again versus like I bought off you one time on eBay and it's said and done. So I definitely agree with that. Now, for our audio listeners, Jamie is a young female. So like as a young female, do you find like any like kind of hardships in going to a card show? I mean, is this something that you could recommend to like your girlfriends and go like, "Hey, come to a show with me." Like, kind of tell me your experience on that.
So I've seen both sides. I remember when I was first getting into it, I wasn't taken seriously because I was a female. And usually I would go to the card shows with my dad, and he was there for me. He's the chauffeur, and that was it. I'm there to buy. And we would approach a table together, and he was acknowledged first every time. I was never acknowledged because it just seemed like I was just there. And it definitely hurt, the self esteem a little bit, just because I didn't understand it at that point. Now, as I've gotten to set up, um, I still think I see that. I think customers come by and they see me sitting there, and I think that they don't know what I don't know what I'm talking about. So they keep walking. And but equally, I've gotten people that have come up and they have older gentlemen that have like their daughters with them, and they're like, listen, like look, she's doing this, like this is super cool, like you can get into this too. And now, because that was really rewarding, to kind of have that interaction too. So I've seen some positive and negatives. I definitely would love to see more females in this business. I think that it's just important. I think, we see a primarily male, dominancy within this collecting, and females, can do this too. Like there's nothing wrong with that, and it's really cool to show interest in something that you relate to with other individuals.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, I could see where people are like, oh my gosh, she's a girl, she doesn't know what she's talking about. But and for all my audio listeners, this chick's table is freaking epic. Every time she's set up, everything's like numbered to 25, numbered to 49, cool autographs, high grade stuff. Like literally, when I tell you she has better cards than most grown men, don't take my word for it. Go give her a follow. I mean, you post almost every day. I mean, literally, that's one of the other things I really appreciate about like your online presence. You're super consistent. And that's one of the things that I see a lot of people struggle with. Or if they are consistent, it's just like the same boring stuff. And like you have such a good taste. So like definitely keep that up. Like you're killing the game. Um Now, is this a like a hobby that you can like tell your friends about, or like how did they react? As a girl, I'm genuinely kind of interested in like how that plays out. I'm sure most of your friends are collecting Lululemon, stuff like that. Like,
I So honestly, it's not something that I tend to talk about. It's just like my thing. Now when I do mention it, I usually approach it with, yeah, I run an eBay business, and then that tends to draw some questions in, and I'm like, oh, I sell sports cards, and I tend to get some looks at first, like, no way, like, what are you talking about? And but then when I kind of talk about the things that we've sold, or the things that we've done, then I think I'm taken a little bit more seriously. They're like, oh, like, this is legit. This is a thing. Okay. Um, but it's not something that I just like casually throw in there. I only do it as like my fun fact, or if someone asks about it, then I bring it up.
yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, that's kind of my approach as well. Like, even in like my day job, like I tend to not talk about it because then they kind of look at you as like, you're the crazy guy. And it's like, until you start telling them like, oh, hey, I went to New York, I went to Chicago, I did this, I did that, and pieces of shiny cardboard paid for all that. And then they're like, wait, really? And so, I totally get that. And that's totally fair. Now, for new upcoming collector, like what are some things that you kind of see people do wrong, is or do right, like, because I'm sure you've seen it. I mean, you've been in the game long enough.
I think when in terms of eBay, I think my biggest pet peeve is when you look at the souls, you look at the actives, and they don't match whatsoever, which kind of drives me a little bit crazy, because then I'm sitting there and I'm like, if you're going to price it higher than what it's selling for, then you're not going to sell it. Like, you need to be lower in order to move that product. So that's definitely one of the things I see a lot of, specifically in wrestling. And it's something that I do voice occasionally, But in terms of like car shows, a thing that I don't like is when you go up to a table and the stuff is not priced. If I cannot see the price, I don't want to look at it, because I don't want to have to ask you how much it is. Just show me and I can decide from there. That has to be my biggest pet peeve. Or the people that don't know it. Like if it's not even on the back, they're like, oh, let me look it up. Well, if you just put it on the front, then we can save everybody some time, and I can know and I can move on if it's not something that, I'm willing to pay that price for.
Preach. Say it louder for the people in the back. Now listen, I do have friends who are just big time dealers, and they definitely, when you've got 10,000 cards, I get it. You can't price out each and every single thing, right? However, like I'm a 1 to 2 table kind of vendor. I think you're a 1 to 2 table kind of vendor. Those people have no excuse. And put the price on the top, just like she said. And like I personally, just like she said, I like to use that price on the top to judge, whether this person is crazy or not. Like you've got $100 sticker on something that the last three did $30. Like I'm just gonna walk away. I'm not gonna waste my time. Now, if you've got a $35 sticker on that same item that's going for 30, okay, you know what? I'm gonna hang out. I might deal, try to work some business. But yeah, I preach. I totally think stickers on top. And, as long as you're not like a 10 table vendor, you've got no excuse. I mean, and even on those big vendors, on your big ticket items, price your stuff. Like, come on. Now, since we've kind of talked about some pet peeves, what are some things that you see people do correct? Like and first off, I just want to say y'all's eBay business is like so clutch. I've looked at your page before. It's super professional, great photos, great listing, great prices. Like, you know, pat yourself on the back. You're killing it on eBay. But like what do you see some stuff that like people are actually doing right?
I think a big one for me, I think is seeing, the eBay stores or, the collectors it shows that have a variety of items. Now, I'm not against if you choose to focus on one thing, that's fine. I have nothing against it. But having a variety of items opens the door for more people to come in and to look at your items. They may come for football and they see you have a soccer card and, they may get that instead. I think having a variety, which I've seen a lot of more recently, I think really helps draw in business. Um, which I'd love to see. Again, if you do one thing, that's fine too. Um, I think, on eBay, I think, you know, having all those boxes clicked, when you're doing your description, things like that, it helps. Um, and I just think that, if you click all your boxes, then you're going to reach more people. You're going to sell, your items, faster, whatever. Um, but I think that those kind of small things, I think really help a lot in order to kind of grow your business.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I am one to go put more information down than you think they actually need. So like, one of the things I like to do, especially like if I say I got something and it's got a print line or a scratch or whatever, like that's the first bullet point in the description. Like, hey, see the last photos, giant scratch across the front of it, something like that. Because I see a lot of these people who go, oh, I'm just struggling with eBay. And then you look at their listings and you're like, dog, you should have put that that's been like bent in half. Like, you know, or turn the lights on to take photos. Like you guys take wonderful photos. Like, um, but I totally agree. It's like check all the boxes, put as much information as you can. Like, I think that's spot on advice. Now, are you only selling on eBay? Are you using any other platforms? I mean, you've mentioned card shows, but are you doing other platforms as well?
Currently we're just doing eBay. Um, soon, shortly, maybe that's still dependent. We're getting into what was PWCC. I don't know what it's called now. But we're
Fanatics
getting
Collect.
into, there you go. We're getting into that for some of the items that we're not moving currently. And we just like to kind of clean up the inventory a little bit. Specifically as you get into, the big card shows that are coming up. Um, but we are primarily eBay. We do a little bit off of Instagram, but eBay is our main selling platform.
Yeah, that's totally fair. So, as far as your content creation goes, I've seen you do a lot on Instagram. Are you doing anything on like TikTok or YouTube or anything like that?
When we first had the eBay store, before it was sports cards, we had a YouTube channel. and it was on our business cards for the longest time. Now it's not. Where we did a video week, and it was kind of just talking about the items that we had gotten, how we came across them, things like that. As it became more card focused, that died down. It didn't make sense at that point. But it is strictly, I don't do TikTok. I mean, I'm on it, but I don't really do anything with it. There's an account. Eventually maybe I'll get there and I'll do some things on there. I don't know. But it is pretty much just Instagram.
That's fair. That's fair. You definitely should get on TikTok because I swear, like, it's surprising, but it's kind of like a new up and coming Instagram in the sense of like you can post stuff to a story and people just go, "Hey, how much? Will you take PayPal, Venmo, Cash App?" Um, and like I said, you're consistently putting out cool stuff daily. Throw it on another platform. I mean, So we've talked a lot about wrestling. Uh, as far as like, what are some other sports that you're into?
So I try to keep it wrestling and football focused. It's just the two sports that I can like confidently talk to you about. Um, I dabbled in, the recent Bowman Chrome, that had like Haley Van List, Caitlin Clark, just for the name. It wasn't because I really knew a lot about them. I just knew that they were relevant, and I wanted to hop on to that, obviously. Um, but I try to keep it just football and wrestling. Occasionally, I will get some soccer in. They tend to be like Mbappe cards or Erling cards, things that I know about. But any other sport, I got nothing.
That's fair. That's fair. Now, since you're primarily like a wrestling focus, if you had like a dream signing between like any wrestlers or like a dual auto, like what would that be? Like what does that look like?
Okay, if you want my current answer, it would probably just be something as straightforward as like a Roman and Cody duel. I just think that'd be cool. They're, your two relevant names. If I could go back in time, it would be the Shield, all three of her autos, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns. That would be it for me. Because if that came out, I'd be all in, 100%.
That's sick. That's sick. Now you said your main kind of complaint with the wrestling stuff is it's a lot of sticker autos, right?
Yes.
Panini, Tops, we know you listen to this account. Do better. Come on. The fans want the on card auto. I mean, look, impeccable is cool, flawless is cool, but for those people on a budget, let's get some cool on card autos. I mean, come on now. Um, now, like, could you, since you've been to like all these wrestling events, have you gotten any like memorabilia, any autographs from like the actual event itself? Or like,
I have not. I've never been to an event where there has been a wrestler or somebody there. I've always just done some of the smaller things. Um, I mean, I've met a handful of wrestlers, but I've never like had anything signed, um, or anything like that. I think it'd be cool. I just haven't got there yet.
you've got such a young face. You really should try. Like, they're going to look at me and they're going to go, nah, bro, you get nothing. But like, you look young enough. If you had a poster that said, hey, Roman Reigns, come sign this, you got a way better shot than I do. That's for sure. Now, let's see. Huh. With the Shield, you know, as a guy who's not knowing, is that still like a thing? Have they changed their names? Like, how does that work? And I know I've
So,
got wrestling fans who listen to this who are probably like, Jerry, you're so stupid. Like,
so the Shield ended some time ago now. That was my biggest heartbreak. Dean Ambrose isn't with the company anymore, and now Roman and Seth, both have their own things. But a really cool moment, I know you don't keep up with wrestling, so I figured I'd share, was at what was the last big WrestleMania when it was Roman and Cody, and someone came in to, save, Cody, Roman, the whole thing. And Seth came in and he smacked Roman with the chair, which, if you know how the Shield ended, that was how it ended. Roman hit Seth with the chair. And I thought it was a really cool, kind of finish the story because I never really got that. But that definitely warmed my heart, when I was watching WrestleMania and I kind of saw, that again. But no, I wish the Shield was still around.
See, that's so cool because I did watch the WrestleMania and I didn't get it. Like, I just thought dude got whacked with a chair. So that's super cool to hear like the backstory on that. Um, so with wrestling, like, do you have like a favorite product? Do you have like a favorite brand? Like, you know, what's a good brand? What's the good product?
So most everything that I have, touched, come contact with tends to be Prism or Select, from Panini. Um, they did, I don't know if they've done a lot of top. They've done some like one-off kind of things. They do like Immaculate Impeccable. They did Elite, Revolution, and then they did in for 2022 they did NXT cards, which they're not. I'm not, trying to diss them or anything, but it's not all that. They're like papery style cards. They're cheap, so like if you just want to rip some cards, there you go. But it had the better like rookie class in it, so it was a big seller, in 2022 because that was what everybody it had the Tiffany, the bronze, the core, it had everybody. Um, but I tend to try to stay on when I say cheaper, it's not cheaper, but on the cheaper side of things, not like impeccable and immaculate kind of price range. That's a little out of it for me, you know.
Now those impeccable boxes, they're still like $1,000, like up there, kind of, right?
They sure are.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was surprised. Even like the WWE Prism like hobby box is still like 400 or 500 bucks, right? I mean, it's cheap, but yeah. So since you're doing this with your family, like, is everybody into wrestling? Are you primarily the main fan? How does that work? Because it's like I've seen you and your what is it, your little sister?
Mhm.
So are you the big wrestling fan? Is the whole family into it? Like, how does that work?
The whole family's definitely in on it. We're all now. Some are a little more into it than others. Some are just roped into it and told, "Hey, you're sitting and you're watching." Um, but I just think it's something that we can all kind of like bond over, because we've been going to these shows and we've done it for so long. Um, but we all have like, wrestling t-shirts. Like when we go to card shows, we're all wearing them. It's just a really cool, way to kind of bond with the family and doing something that I enjoy. Which helped, kind of alleviate some of the awkwardness sometimes that comes out of, going to card shows and things like that.
So does like dad have like a favorite wrestler? Does mom have a favorite wrestler? Like, are we on the same page? Do we have like competing wrestlers? Like, how does that work? Because I know with sports, generally, like you've got families that are like, I'm only Alabama or I'm only Auburn or whatever. Like, how does that work with the wrestling world?
Honestly, I mean, if you ask each individual person, we could probably tell you, yep, this is my favorite, this is my favorite. We've never really had any issues with like, our people like clashing. One of the things we always do when it comes to when we're watching the events, me and my dad will always take a vote on who's going to win. And it's just like a fun little game we like to play, and we see who's right, we see who's wrong. But I don't. My dad doesn't really have a favorite wrestler. If it was, it'd be someone from his time frame. I'm not familiar with. Um, but my mom's a big Batista fan, but currently she's a little inside joke, but she's a big fan of Otis, free Otis. So
Now, what about the little sister? Is she the one in the family who's just kind of roped in, or does she have a favorite? Or
She's just there. She's along for the ride. She's just there for the experience, and then we come home and she's done. She's over it.
Hey, that's fun. That's fun. I Well, see, that's one of the things that I really liked about you guys when I first met y'all, that it was a whole family event because, one of the things I've been saying on the Quiet Card podcast is like, if we're really going to 10x the hobby, like we have to have a space that's, mom friendly. I personally like when I set up at a show, I always try to have the most mom friendly booth. Like I always try to have like a little game for the kids. Like, hey, here's two cards and one's real, one's fake. You win a card. Like I feel like the more you can rope the family in, the better for the longevity. Because if it's only a dad or son hobby, there's real no longevity in that. Like, what do you think kind of like makes it different with wrestling over sports? Because with sports, I tend to notice like, son and dad are into it, but mom, she's roped in and along for the ride. Like, what makes wrestling different?
I Honestly, it's a really good mix. Like, there's nothing that really, like, not one particular, male, female that stands out, mom, dad. I've had whole families kind of come up and they've all kind of pointed and they're like, oh, like, look, I just saw this person on TV. And they're all kind of talking about it. Equally, I've just had like, fathers and sons kind of come up and, they're looking and they're browsing, but it's definitely been more of like a family thing. Or younger kids. Younger kids will come up and they'll point and they're like, "Oh, I know that person. Like I've seen them." The Rock. Like if I ever have one of his cards out, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, that's The Rock," and then because they know about him. But it's definitely more family oriented than I think some other sports are. Like football, it's really more father son kind of thing that you see a lot of, which helps kind of grow the wrestling kind of collecting thing, in my opinion.
No, I would totally agree. Like that was the one thing that really stood out to me at the Fanatics Fan Fest in New York is it was so many like mom and dad pushing a stroller and like it wasn't just dad dragging his kids along. And that's one thing I really do have to applaud the WWE and like that crowd is it is way more family oriented than football or baseball or like I've got some guys who are UFC fans and they go, oh, the whole family's interested. You look at his wife and she's like, two guys punching each other in the face. But like when I went to the WWE event, I mean, the whole family's set up, like mom's cheering, the kids are cheering. And I think I think that has a lot more longevity than just, all right, let's go watch Bama play. Roll Tide. Like, and
Mhm.
I'm a football fan, but I definitely appreciate the family aspect. So as we kind of wrap up here, like what's some advice you can give as a young female collector? Like what's some advice you can give to some like because we really want more females in the hobby. What could the industry do better? I mean, as a female, like other than guys just being jerks and not acknowledging you because you're a girl. And I definitely could see that happening because it's like they're rude to me, so I can only imagine how it is to be a girl. So like what's some things the industry could do?
Honestly, I think promoting it honestly to both, boys and girls. I think you see it really heavy on the boy side of thing. The video game aspect. There's always wrestling video games. There's always football video games. And I'm not saying girl can't go do that. I'm just saying I feel like to me that's directed more towards boys who love the video game. I think trying to make sure we're promoting it to both. I think overall, I think just having more of an accepting culture in as a female, that's interested in sports cards, I think that would help a lot. I think there's more female collectors out there. I just think they're not as known and talked about because they don't want to advertise it because they're afraid of how someone's gonna like look at them or whatever. Um, but I definitely think if it's something you enjoy, go for it. Like don't let someone's opinion hold you back. If you like it, and it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Which I think is just really important to get across to, young females that are interested in, getting into this.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, first off, everybody should be way more kind because I see so many of these people who are just rude, and it's like, bro, it's 10 o'clock at a card show. Like, what's wrong with you? Why are you so grumpy already? Like, um, now I would say you're a seasoned collector, a seasoned, flipper. Like, if I'm a novice and I'm watching kind of your content, I'm watching our content, like what's a piece of advice you can give for a younger collector? Like, hey, I want to build a wrestling collection, or I want to look at this as a business. Like, as a young lady, like, what's your advice?
I think finding your niche, I think finding something that you're confident in, you know about, and you understand it. I think, too many people come into this, having such a broad view. They don't have one thing. Hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to just look at this today, which becomes overwhelming. You go to to one of the tables and you're looking at everything, instead of focusing on one thing at that moment. Um, I think it's finding something that you are confident in, a sport, a person, whatever that may be. I mean, I know young kids come up all the time and they ask if you have a certain player, which I think is really important. Don't be too broad, kind of have an idea of what you want, what you're going for. And it just kind of helps and it makes a more enjoyable experience.
Now, as a new person getting in, would you suggest, me going out and buying hobby boxes? Would you suggest singles? Like, how do you navigate that? I mean, as somebody starting from scratch, small budget, we're not talking crazy big spender. Like, how would you best navigate that scenario?
I think if you're just getting into it, I think it's important to start small. Start with the singles. Number one, to really make sure it's what you're interested in before you go and spend a bunch of money. Number two, I think it's just really important to start small. You can't go big. I mean, in terms of this business, you can't spend all that money because you're never going to get it back when you're, buying boxes all the time. Um, Going through those dollar boxes, and I know a lot of times you'll never find, wrestling in them, but occasionally I've looked into some. People don't know anything about it. They toss it in and they move on. But I think, going through those dollar boxes, trying to find some singles. I think from there you kind of decide. I think, going and get retail boxes from Target, Walmart, um, are probably the next step. And then if you decide that you want to go spend your little extra bit of money that a hobby box is going to cost, then you go all in, but don't make that a regular habit because you're never getting your money back. It's fun, but it hurts when you realize how much you spent and how much you're making.
I would totally agree with that. I would totally agree with that. I've had some buddies who just like jumped into the hobby and they're like, oh, cool. Let me just go to the shop and drop 500-600 bucks. And then they're like, oh, man, I got $100 worth of cards. And it's like, you know, I'm definitely the one to preach buy singles, don't rip. I only preach that because I have terrible luck. Every time I rip, I make free kids packs to give away at the next show I set up at. But yeah, I agree with the start small, especially just to feel it out to make sure it's what you like because one of the things I find is that like my taste is always evolving and changing and you're 100% right. When you go and spend big bucks and then you turn out and go, I'm not really as into it. It definitely hurts to know what you spent versus what you're making. So I think that's super, super solid advice. Well, Jamie, I really appreciate you taking the time. Like, I know you're a busy woman. You're working, school, everything. Hit us with like a kind of a closing, where do we find you? What's your next show that you're going to be set up at? Like, give us a little good kind of closing piece.
So you can find me on Instagram, posting every day. The story always has plenty of things on it. Um, eBay store, same as the Instagram username. And we are setting up the first weekend in October in Scottsboro, I believe. Pretty confident in that.
Nice, nice. Now, are y'all doing one table? Or are you doing two table? How big of it are you doing?
We're just doing one.
Yeah, yeah. And for anybody who is here in the South, I love the Scottsboro show. I don't want to call it my home show, but it's one of the shows that, like, if you've got nothing to do on a Saturday, it's so worth the drive. Plus, there's lots of good food around there, and there's a great variety. I mean, I go to a lot of these shows, and I know you go to a lot of shows too. And it's like I see the same stuff. It's shiny football, shiny basketball. And Scottsboro is one of those shows where you can find everything. But if you're looking for the best wrestling table, you just gotta go over there and visit Thomas Family Hustle, and they've definitely got it. So hey, like I said, everybody go give Jamie a follow. Thomas Family Hustle 205, Instagram, eBay. We're gonna twist her arm and get her on TikTok and back on YouTube because she's doing great content. You might as well just repost it on there. But hey, like I said, I really appreciate you coming out. Like, I think this is going to be a great conversation to, like, help, because we're just trying to help the novice grow. And, I think you're doing a great job. And so, appreciate you so much for coming out and taking your time.
It was a pleasure to, speak about something that I really enjoy and kind of sharing it with others.
Awesome. Awesome. So, everybody, just remember this is the Jerry Pitre Show, your go to podcast for the world of collectible cards and sports memorabilia. Whether you're a seasoned collector or just getting started, this is the spot you need to check out. Like, follow, share, subscribe. Thank you all. We out of here. Peace.